Welcome to another edition of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator at the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at KU.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career and Outreach Coordinator for the KU School of Journalism and Mass Communications. We are going international for the first time in 3 years. We're with Logan, Hassig, KU alum, Group Account Director at VML&R in London. Welcome, Logan.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So you've been in London for about, 2 months? Is that correct?
Yep. So moved over middle of July and started the role here at VML&R London on August 1st.
So was that a pretty smooth transition from your time at New York?
Yeah, I would say relatively smooth. It's obviously the same global company, but as all global companies, they definitely have their kind of in local market nuances. So there was a bit of an adjustment, but fortunately I had the opportunity to come over to London or VML London previously. So I kind of was relatively acclimated to the office here. And some of the key people there to meet as well. And everyone was obviously so warm and welcoming. So yeah, not too bad.
And you've kind of grown up traveling, right? I think I read it somewhere. Wasn't your mom a flight attendant, or maybe she still is?
Yeah, that is correct. Good memory, Steve. My mom has been a flight attendant for Delta for probably 34 years now. So very much grew up from basically the minute I could get on an airplane, I was on one as quickly as possible. And the minute I could start traveling, on my own and that kind of level of independence, I started doing that as well. It's been something that, it's a huge kind of passion point for me just to like be and understand other kind of cultures and obviously meet new people within that. But I think it's obviously opened up a lot of the world to me just generally, and a lot of doors, both personally and professionally.
And your career has been pretty unique because you started your career, I think you were an intern for VMLY in Kansas City, and then you moved to New York, and your entire career has been with the same organization. What's it been like kind of slowly progressing throughout the company? Was that always your plan, to take on new responsibilities?
Not my plan. I don't tend to make a lot of long-term plans. I'm not sure if I'm not supposed to say that, but I tend to kind of operate on what kind of feels right in those moments, and it's definitely been the right decision in those moments thus far. I would say that I really landed there just based on the people that I met at VML in the early days in Kansas City. And again, I've always wanted to kind of open myself up to the world and opportunities that the world presents itself. And very early on, actually, I thought that I would love to move to a big city like New York or London. And there was a bulk of the opportunities that were there at VML were in New York at the time. So kind of took that on, and I think that the company has a lot of like great mobility, and if you make those like strong connections with people internally and really kind of set out, I think, your more short-term goals that then again ladder up to long-term goals, which I tend to do. It's just that those goals aren't, they don't get very, very specific around the whereabouts. But it really is like important to me to kind of continue to operate in a zone of discomfort. So I've kind of always lived in that realm.
Now, when these new positions come about, do you go out and pursue them, or does the leadership team say, "Hey, Logan, we think this would be a great fit for you"? How does that come about?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that's going to look very, very different depending on the company and kind of the whether that's the growth trajectory or the opportunities that exist within various teams and departments. So I can really only speak for my experience here, but with me, I think that I've throughout my time at VML, I've kind of put myself into growth roles in different areas. Of course, within marketing and advertising, there's just so many avenues that you can go within that. So whether it be a client role or in strategy, and now even strategy opens up the door to brand strategy, or if you want to be more focused on commerce or customer experience, there's there's this whole world now of things that you can work within the world of marketing. And I tend to be someone who likes to kind of explore a lot of things. And I think I'm still in the process of doing that to really land on where I'd want to be long term. And I think that's still a quite healthy thing to do as you develop your career. But to answer your question, I think yes and no. Mainly it's being proactive. So for the most part, the different roles and kind of opportunities, in particular in London, that was very much a proactive part on my end. Of course, you need to have that kind of moment where mutually it aligns. And I think for me, it was more so I knew that I wanted to make a global move. And so putting feelers out there, just kind of, again, showing people and telling people that you're open for this or that. So that opens those doors when they are, because of course, we can't always dictate what the opportunities are, what's available, and all the timings. But I think, yeah, just being quite like proactive with the right people around what it is that you want. And then, you just hope that the timing all lines up and yeah, it's all, so I think it's a little bit of both.
So during your time at KU, did you have a sense of what you wanted to do? I assume you wanted something to do with advertising, but did you know in what area of advertising?
To be honest with you, no. I really didn't have any idea. Because I think I mean, the reality is and I would say this is probably true for most industries, like you really don't know until you're in it. And I'm a very like live by experience. I'm also in just a very visual person as well. So I tend to just learn best through doing. And I think, yeah, I'm still working that out, to be honest, within the industry. So I think, and university, yeah, it really did, like, it helped me to kind of understand the type of work I want to do. Obviously, within marketing, I love the idea of like building great brands, and I think meeting the people along the way, especially those who like worked within the industry, were really influential for me. So that just drove me to, again, that like initial first door. And then from there, I think, again, it's all you're still kind of growing and learning and working out where your kind of sweet spots are amongst all of that.
And who have been, can you share who some of the brands you've worked on closely? I think I saw early in your career, maybe New Balance.
Yeah. So I still work very closely with New Balance. Hence me just finishing work here at 7 p.m. Because they're obviously based, well, not obviously, their global headquarters are in Boston. So a lot of my team still sits in New York as well. And also actually in Kansas City and Colorado. So I work with team members all across the US still, and now in Europe. I have clients in Paris, and it's all really interesting because it just, yeah, again, it starts to kind of widen the aperture of the world. Other than that, yeah, I mean, I work with another client here, which I can't say because they're a brand new piece of business. But that's exciting. And other than that, I worked across a lot of different categories. So within CPG or tech. So worked with, again, another kind of local brand to Kansas is Hill's Pet Nutrition, and Colgate as well. So kind of like a large gamut of categories, which is what, that's what makes also the world of marketing advertising quite fun, because you just learn a lot of things about a lot of different categories and products that you never thought that you needed to know, but then you're like, at least if you're a curious person like I am, you're like, oh, that's really interesting and actually directly applicable to everything I do. So yeah, lots of brands.
And you bring up a good point. I mean, you're in London now, so a lot of your clients you might be talking to them in, like you said, New York, Boston. So what is your day like? How do you maintain your hours? I mean, I would think it gets kind of chaotic at times.
Yeah, so I think I'm, again, still kind of in the process of working that out, just given the time zone change between those. I've always, when I was in New York, I definitely worked with people in the UK or in Europe now and then, but not on a daily basis. So I think the key is really like setting boundaries for yourself, and also being super clear with those that you work with in terms of, you know, when you're available and when you might not be. And I think like that communication is really, really important to set from the beginning. But also it's just I think just the reality of the global world that we work in now. There's going to be some odd hours here and there, and I think everyone's probably kind of going through that curve. And like, again, I think if you really want to work at a global capacity with global brands and across different markets, I think that is kind of expected and anticipated in some capacity. But again, I think, like, you know, maintaining a somewhat normal working schedule day to day is quite important, and having that kind of healthy balance.
And one of your first connections with VML&R, I think I read, didn't you apply for like a scholarship, like the American Advertising Federation? And
Yeah.
And you got to meet John Cook at the time, right? The CEO.
Yeah, I wonder if he remembers that. Yeah, I was applying for AAFKC scholarship, I think it is.
And that's like, I think KU Advertising Club. Yeah.
Yeah.
KC Advertising Club.
Yeah. Okay. So, so I didn't really have any expectations going into that. I kind of just thought I would be interviewed by a random ad dude in KC, but turns out I was like in a board, like, I mean, I say a boardroom, but it's like an advertising boardroom. So it was pretty relaxed relative to a lot of corporate offices. But yeah, beautiful space, you know, out at the Wheeler Airport, the VML office. And you like kind of see the airplanes flying in. And yeah, I was right at the edge, and then John Cook was opposite of the long table of me. And to be honest, I'm not sure that I knew who he was the whole time, but I was just kind of talking about my experience. And actually, a lot of what I talked about, I remember, was my internship in Dublin, and kind of what I took away from that, and a lot of those, and where I like plan to kind of apply it. And it was like less about kind of more like my tangible work experience per se, but more, just kind of where I saw the world going, like in terms of marketing, advertising, and how I've learned that from various places I've been and my experiences. And I think off the back of that, I got some great leads in Kansas City. There was a lot of the great leads there sitting with me. So I think that was really what opened a lot of doors for me, as that interview.
And also during that scholarship process, I think I read, like when you were younger, did I read right that you were a foot model for some project for VML? Is that true?
You know more about me than I do, Steve. I can't remember these things. I had like a bit of a child modeling stunt since I was pretty young. And one of them, like, I guess I was more like a teen. I got hired for a foot modeling job, of which like ended up walking in the doors of VML. I think they had, it's basically their production facility called Vault. Okay. And was like, walked in, I was like, this place is really cool. Like, this doesn't seem like work to me. And that was the first time that I really walked into some type of an office. I was quite young again, and just thinking this would be a nice like environment to work in, because I don't know, both of my my parents, they never really worked in corporate environments, so it wasn't really a normalized thing on my head to like think about applying or being at like a 8 to 5, 8 to 6 job in an office place. But seeing that, I think, really inspired me and made me think, oh, I could work in an environment like this. And then, I went off with my foot modeling. I think it was for like a sport ad, probably for like the Royals or something. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know where the placement ended up, but that's probably fine, because I'm not a huge fan of my feet. I don't even know I was hired for that, but that's quite a fun story.
So I remember, like, during your time at KU, you're definitely involved with the KU Ad Club. Can you talk about how important it is to students to be involved in like activities outside the classroom?
Yeah. I think it's hugely important. I think it's critical for growth post college. That to me came very naturally to me. Like I'm I'm truly like not the most academic person. Probably now, well, definitely now more so than I was in college. As in, like I really enjoy like I'm taking external courses online. I've always enjoyed learning, but actually the practicalities of like learning, taking tests, and it all being under times that I was like, oh, this it just doesn't it didn't appeal to me as much at the time. But of course, I got the stuff done that I needed to. And I think like what I really enjoyed the most within college is like, yeah, doing those kind of um, extracurriculars, and a lot of that was just again like learning new things from new people and being in new environments. And I think you can kind of pick and choose as well what based on your interest in terms of those extracurriculars. And I think that those learnings are just as valuable to you at a personal and professional level than what you learn in the classes themselves. I think they're both very, very important. And I'm not saying I ever like skipped class. Like I was a good student for sure. But I think that those like they almost like had this like same level of equity for me in my mind in terms of what would kind of get me to where I wanted to be next.
And actually, before I was going to talk to you today, I stumbled on an email that you sent me because you coordinated that KU Ed crawl like in New York, right? One of those years, like 2016, 2017. Was
Yeah,
it the easy thing to pull off?
I think so.
That takes some
Yeah.
work.
I don't know. I don't remember having a massive struggle with it, but I think yeah, I mean, I'm quite like persistent with people, and I think if you're very clear about what I think I was probably pretty clear about the intentions and the opportunities that it could also open up for those agencies in New York. And at the end of the day, like I mean, just as I am on here, and I'm sure a lot of others have done this as well, Steve, is like and like when you're emailing those agencies or when you're making those connections, like you might fail 80% of the time because some people just don't care. But there's a good subset of people that do, and that will like very openly want to host and teach, and even learn from the students. And obviously it's mutually advantageous as well, so I think that came into play. But yeah, a lot of us have, I think, got to the places we want to be in life because of the people around us. And so I think that there's a good subset of people that very much understand that conceptually, so they're willing to help.
And you got to connect with VML in New York during that ed call, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Went to
So was that the
Columbus.
place you actually worked at in New York, probably?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, again, how quickly after. Yeah, I remember the office manager at the time was named Erica, and she was amazing. And she very openly welcomed us into it was 3 Columbus Circle, which is pretty much where I worked for my whole career there. Apart from more recently this year, we moved to 3 World Trade Center, so I got to experience that for just about a month before I moved to London. But of course, with the gap of COVID, of which I worked from my Brooklyn apartment room for like 2 years. But yeah, that was it was also a great like experience to walk into Columbus Circle and just kind of see the dynamics of what that looks like. And there's amazing views from the rooftop of like Central Park, and that always kind of gets you. So yeah, really inspiring spaces.
And during the peak of COVID, were you still able to kind of keep moving forward with your job pretty well? I mean, in a virtual world?
Yeah, for sure. I think it took a bit of an adjustment, of course, but all of us are pretty acclimated to technology at that stage. So I think like, I don't know, I think as we do now, we're still even, I mean, it takes again time to adapt back into the real world of like being in an office with loads of people around. And I think kind of had that bit of a shock for a bit, but then eventually, yeah, you kind of get it down. I think um, hybrid work is definitely in my eyes like a really, really beneficial bit of COVID, because again, it kind of opens up the world. But in the same vein, like, I'm very happy that we're all going back to being in person and things, because that's something that I think I didn't even realize I was craving a lot until, yeah, going back in and seeing people in person. But you know, that's a whole other topic we could get into.
Well, Logan, hey, I truly appreciate your time. I know you're extremely busy, and I think you got a birthday coming up tomorrow, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
So, hey, I always like to close with a cheers. So if you got any sort of fancy mug there.
Yeah. So I have two. I have one that's Ted Lasso.
Nice.
That's very appropriate, being in London with our KC roots, and then also a VML London. So cheers to both.
So cheers to your careers, Logan. Hey, I appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you, Steve.